Did you want to start the show with the acknowledgement of the shooting, or did you want to end the show
Yeah.
with it? How did you want to do it?
How about yeah, yeah, let's end it
We
because
can,
right.
if anything, I can give. We can start with a brief acknowledgement, and then end the
Yep.
show with a brief comment on it.
Yep. Yep, definitely. So, yeah, welcome to the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Once again on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube Live. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith. So, got plenty plenty on our plate, but we like to pass our thoughts and prayers and condolences to the people out there in the Michigan State University campus and community as well, pending what happened. But we'll get to that later. Got some
Yeah,
Pistons lines and a little Spartans men's basketball news to talk about. Let's get to it right now. The Detroit Pistons trade Saddiq Bey to the Atlanta Hawks last week and Kevin Knox to the Golden State Warriors and acquire center James Wiseman from the Warriors in a four-team trade involving the Portland Trailblazers. Prior to the NBA trade deadline, Saddiq Bey averaged 14.5 points per game and shot 35.7% for Detroit. He's headed to the Hawks. Kevin
hmm
Knox, head of the Warriors, 5.6 points per game, 37.1% from three as a reserve. And then James Wiseman, in return, a 7 foot 0 inch tall center, a former number 2 pick, averaging 11 and a half points per game and 5.8 rebounds per game and 0.9 blocks per game in the 2020 to 2021 season. And in the same season, he torn his meniscus and he missed all of the 21-22 season to long-term injury, and then he regressed this regular season with 6.9 points per game and three and a half rebounds per game. He was sent to the G League this regular season. By the way, Golden State actually gets tax money relief from the Atlanta Hawks, and Gary
hmm
Payton Jr. was traded from the Trailblazers to the Warriors. Gary Payton
Ah,
Jr.,
so
probably the son of
GP,
Gary Payton Sr.
GP was a part of that deal that sent Wiseman to Detroit. After all, or
That's
was that a
true.
separate deal? Or was that a separate deal?
No, that was all
Ah,
in the four-team
okay,
trade.
okay,
It's four
because I
teams.
knew there was some communication mix up, or whatever it was, over whether or not Peyton would pass a physical or whatever. But it seemed that they got that resolved,
Yep.
because he was dealing with, I think he was recovering from an upper body injury that was going to require at least a month or two for him to heal. So there was doubt as to whether or not the trade would go through. With his physical status currently, more on the negative side of things. But I see they were able to get that issue sorted out.
All right. Yep. So, what do you think of James Wiseman?
Well, first and foremost, I think we have to talk about the sharp decline, if you want to say so, of Saddiq Bey. When you consider how there was talk of him before the season started as being a potential core piece with this team, not necessarily on the same tier as, say, Cade Cunningham or Jaden Ivey or Jalen Duran, but
Right.
right alongside them, like along the same tier of maybe a Killian Hayes, so to speak. But what we saw, you know, from Sadiq in terms of his performance, especially after Cade went down, was regression all around. And you mentioned it, with the poor shooting, the mediocre at best points per game production. It just was not going to get it done, because considering what he had showed the season before, and what was expected of him this year. But hey, it just didn't work out for him that way. And when you think about it, considering the fact that Troy Weaver was likely going to make a move, because he's made moves already throughout his tenure here in Detroit. I mean, let's not forget about how he dealt Jeremy Grant. So after the reports that Bojan Bogdanovic was not going to be moved, you had to wonder who was going to be the person who is going to be the most expendable. And when you consider the fact that Killian Hayes has picked up better stock in recent months, considering how bad of a start of the season he had, it seemed likely that the only other available option or answer to that question was Saddiq Bey. And Troy Weaver was able to get a deal done. And I think in terms of what the Pistons could have gotten back in return for Saddiq, you got to understand you were not going to. This is a far different deal than what you got in the Jeremy Grant deal. Far different set of circumstances. Whereas here, we're trading Saddiq. Now what we're getting with Wiseman. First of all, you wish Saddiq well. Now what we have with James Wiseman, I think it's a matter of fact of him working off some of that rust and whatever mental issues may be plaguing him because he is coming back from that meniscus injury that you mentioned. I think there's still promise within him. I think it's far too much or far too ahead automatically declare him a bust compared to say a Kevin Knox, which I'm glad they were able to move on from him. I can't wait for them to move on from the likes of Nerlens Noel as well. But that will come one day in the near future. It's just not right now. But with Wiseman, it seems like a move that you really didn't need to make for depth purposes, but this seems like the best available option or the best return that you were going to get for Saddiq in terms of all of the options, all the other deals or potential scenarios or trades or deals that you saw in front of you for the deadline. So knowing that, it's called a work with what you got. I can see comparisons to, hey, didn't you just do this with Marvin Bagley? And yeah, basically it's very similar, especially consider the fact that both these guys were on the same career trajectory paths before they ended up here in Detroit. Now, what we saw from Bagley last year, as a result, admittedly, of him playing with Cade, we saw a bit of an uptick for him. And we saw that a little bit more in some spurts this year. I think we could have seen more of that more if Cade was healthy, but you get the point. I think you're trying to see if Wiseman can have that same sort of effect. It's a low floor, it's a low risk, high reward move essentially with what you're doing here with Troy Weaver. But you keep wondering, how many more times you're going to do this type of move, this type of similar deal or trade year after year, and you're not getting the proper development or the proper progress from the team that's necessary to compete. Again, I think that goes beyond other aspects as to why your players are not developing. Namely, that's because of coaching, but that's another topic for another day. I trust, what Troy Weaver can do in terms of getting the players that we need through the draft. And while this trade on the surface is not as satisfactory as fans would have hoped or liked, I do think it will be a necessary move that will be beneficiary for the team in the long term.
Yeah. Got to think wise if you're Troy Weaver, and he did. So, what would you grade this as we do our What's Your Grade segment real quick as we pinch that in?
C, probably C minus as well. Well, a low C, because I think, again, in terms of depth purposes, the return that you got for Saddiq Bey, knowing how disappointing Wiseman has been this year, it's easy to write this off as a disappointing move. But again, this could be, again, a repeat of what we saw with Marvin Bagley. And if it turns out that way, it's going to surprise some people. And it'll be an added depth piece to me at not necessarily a position of need, but it's always not a bad thing to have enough big men in the NBA, in my opinion, because if you have a quality efficient rotation of big men that can control rebounds, be great rim protectors, and be that general in the paint, that makes things easier for you for the defense and other aspects as well.
Yeah. So, yes, the Pistons, I believe, needed a center as well because Boyan Bogdanovic is a small forward, like you pointed out, not a center. So
Yeah,
Jalen Duren
and they don't
apparently
want,
was the
yeah,
lone center that was not a reserve.
right. They don't want to
So,
overwork the rookie. He is only 18. He's literally the youngest player in the whole league.
right.
Which when you think about it, he was born a month after LeBron made his rookie debut, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah. So, with that being said, I'm going to grade this a mid range C, just to be fair, because, again, the Pistons needed a center to give Jalen Duren company. He racked up 30 and 17 and 4 blocks in that double overtime win over the San Antonio Spurs at Little Caesars Arena, 138 to 131.
Mm-hmm.
Hokey smokes,
So
Bullwinkle.
you see the promise with them for sure. You just hope it develops properly over time.
Yeah, just gotta be aware of the wear and tear. You know what I mean? Like you pointed out.
Well, you already saw how it did decay this year. You hope it doesn't become a lingering effect.
Exactly. So that's Pistons. See, as we go into some Lions here, every sports fan, football fan, and NFL fan is aware of how awful the NFL officiating can be at times. It can happen anytime. I admit that it's not all the calls are correct, to say the least. But for some Lions fan or Detroit sports fan to expect how badly he or she thinks it can help, it can, or not help, but he or she thinks it can keep its Lions from making the playoffs and winning games is delusional. Take Tony Dombrowski, for example, on Twitter. He's always one sided, whether he knows his stuff or not. He may know at least some, but he tweeted and told us 2 weeks ago during the AFC and NFC championship games. To, he told us all to think about what could happen, which I strongly doubt. It goes. I mean, it goes both ways. It happens every everywhere, no matter how many times it happens to one particular team, whether it be the Lions or the Broncos or the Steelers or the Eagles. It could even happen in the Super Bowl. I get that, but he always thinks of this narrative, and so do a lot of other fans on Twitter. Look, the officials don't hate our teams, and neither do any of the professional leagues. Mistakes happen, and they are only based on human error, and it's all a part of adversity. As a sports team, you have to play through that adversity, overcome it, and win on your own power. Don't ever count on the refs or umpires to help you. Don't ever count on luck of any sort. Don't ever blame adversity. You have to be better for it all 100% of the time. Complaining about any of that stuff isn't going to help you or getting you anywhere in any level of the sport, whether it be the pros, minors, college, or high school. The Lions, for example, can play through adversity and win on their own power. I believe in them, and I have faith they will do so. That is complete truth right there.
Yeah, and in terms of the theme of adversity, I think there is also a hidden truth of what the fans, what they're expressing outwardly. It is, I don't know if you want to say it's a deep-seated fear, or rather, I would say repressed or triggered memories, because they have seen notable examples, fair or not, consistent or not, conspiracy or not. I know you don't like the Detroit versus everybody narrative, but there has been a proven documented history of, unfortunately, all these wacky, weird, and just flat out bad calls that just also happened to go against the Lions at every in an opportune point or play. And most notably, in terms of, I think what we're discussing here, fans were expressing this because they saw what had happened at the end of the Super Bowl. It brought back bad memories of the picked up flag against the Cowboys in the playoffs in 2015. That's what it also triggered as well. It triggered those memories. It triggered the memories of, the Calvin
Third and
Johnson
one.
play, the other bad plays, that seemed to go against their way. But like you said, Taylor, you still have to find a way to overcome and find, and play through that at adversity. Like, for example, yes, the refs screwed up that moment against the Lions Cowboys game, but Lions still got the ball back. They had a chance to win. You know, now let's not forget the fact that Jim Caldwell punted that ball on 4th and 1 instead of going for it. And let's also not forget the fact that the Lions still got the ball back with 50 seconds left, and Stafford got strip stacked at midfield. So that's an example of trying to play through adversity, and you failed. And with the Chiefs, they were going through some adversity themselves. Let's not forget, they were the ones that were down 10 entering that second half. They were the ones that had the quarterback that had the beat up ankle, that seemed to have re-injured that same ankle right before half. So they had to go through some adversity themselves. Now, granted, I was still vividly disappointed with how that game ended, because I think the way that game was playing, you saw a potential all-time classic that could have had an all-time greater ending, but that got sullied by a very anticlimactic penalty. But I digress. The Chiefs still did what they had to do to win. I can't knock them for doing what they had to do to win a championship. And if you're Philly, you got to look at yourself also as well in terms of, hey, we had some missed chances. We shouldn't have fumbled that ball, for example. We should have played better defense in the second half. What the hell happened to us between that in the first half and the second half? Whereas every single time KC touched the ball, zoom, 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 zoom down the field, they score. So that's another example of facing that adversity. What happens when teams can make adjustments on you on the biggest stage? How can you respond to that? What is your counterpunch? So that's part of that adversity that the Lions must face for this year and beyond, especially if you want to talk about which is what Dan Campbell mentioned with the goal of he and Brad Holmes said, we want to compete for the division title in 2023. Well, in order to do that, you're going to have to go through some levels of adversity, such as knocking off the defending champion Vikings, who, by the way, is coming off a double-digit win season. Also, you got to consider that while Green Bay may be going through a transition period or start of a new era, they're going to still try to come at you with everything they got, and the Bears could be as much of a wild card as anybody in that division. So you never know what to expect. You got to expect any and everything from the NFC North if you're the Lions, because you never know. It could be one of the toughest division in all football to play, or it could be what we saw from the NFC South. You just don't know.
Yeah. And by the way, back to the Super Bowl and that Chiefs final drive, that setting of the winning field goal. The Chiefs were already in field goal range before that holding penalty, and they would have done the same thing whether they were near the end zone or not.
Here's the thing, though. Because of that penalty, it essentially allowed the Chiefs to kill and drain that time and clock with by kicking the field goal with as little time as possible. If they had not called that, because if they had not called that penalty, it still would have been a field goal kicking opportunity. I think the Chiefs still would have made that kick. But Philly, guess what? That means they get the ball back only down 3, but with a minute and a half left to go instead of like 8 seconds left to try to come off with a miracle. So that one decision right there, that flag, you could say tipped the scales to where the Chiefs did what they had to do to drain the clock and not let Jalen Hurts get the ball back with as little to no time as possible. Again, I can't fault KC for taking advantage of it. They did the smart thing. I would have done it. But you can't place the fault of the rest of saying, listen, that ticky-tack decision essentially decided the game with how it caused changed the game plan for KC to run off the rest of that clock.
Right. So even if they were not near the end zone, they still would have run the clock out the same way, and still would have tried like a 40 or 45 yard field goal.
Actually, no,
they still would have nailed it.
They couldn't. Yeah, correct. But they wouldn't have been able to run out the clock because that was third down. Period. They were about to get off the field.
Third down. That's true.
Yeah, that was third down too. So again, because of that flag, fresh set of downs, you can drain the clock. Boom, that's the game right there. It was literally the same thing that happened in the AFC Championship game against Cincy. That's why people are really, while they want to say, listen, congrats to KC, but they don't feel they really earned it because when it came down to it, at the end of the game for both those two games, it felt like it was literally handed to them on a silver platter.
Well, on that was I saw that one late hit that enforced 15 yards.
Yeah,
that was clearly out of bounds.
It was, but let's not forget on that same play, the refs also missed blatant holding by the Chiefs. You can look back at the tape. It was clear as day a hold being done by the Chiefs offensive line that allowed Mahomes to get the free space he needed anyway to complete that scramble. So again, if you're a Cincy fan, you're double pissed because you saw that missed holding. Now, granted, that late hit by his side was legit, but they should have called that holding too. It should have been offsetting penalties. But because of that, the Chiefs, they got the field position, they got the field goal, they got the win, and eventually let them to get in the Super Bowl with the same set of circumstances happened again. So again, that was another fan base that got triggered, Cincinnati Bengals fans, because they just saw the same crap replayed 2 weeks ago, and now here comes the conspiracy nuts about NFL being scripted. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people have been saying on Twitter as of late. But it happens to every team. It's not just the Lions. It's every team in the NFL whether either Major League Baseball or the NHL or the NBA, but it's not always our team. It's not always just our teams.
Mhm.
It happens to everyone else, no matter how many times. It's all an even playing field. Yeah, and Roger Goodell, I want to mention, he mentioned that the NFL officiating has never been better,
Which
but
was completely laughable in terms of the timing that he said that, because that was said what, uh,
probably
the
being
week
an
of, but
ignoramus.
that was said in the lead up to the game. And then when we saw what happened in the game as a result, not just because of that late, that last penalty, there was catches that should have been catches that got overturned. A lot of ticky tack stuff that conveniently happened to go Casey's way. So when you see all that happening, and you see that quote that basically served like a preamble from the commissioner himself, it just comes off as very laughable and fishy.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what else to say. I know it's crazy, but still, it's part of adversity.
Hmm.
So I still think the Lions can win the NFC North despite of all that.
Yeah, it just comes
So
down to it really comes down to you can't having be having 1-6 starts and 0-10 starts again and trying to expect to win a division. No, that's because as great as you may be in terms of finishing the season, you need to be consistent all year round. Aiden Hutchinson himself mentioned that we need to be consistent all year round, and that should be the goal for them. Not just in terms of let's win the NFC North. No, let's just have a consistent season from start to finish. And once you get that settled, that first step out the way, everything else will follow in a flow.
yep. So that's Lions. That's NFL talk. Yeah, I still think the Chiefs earned it because they played smart. They got a little help with that holding call, but they played. But it was up to them to come up with a strategy, and it paid dividends. It was
Listen,
so easy to do.
Andy Reid in that second half coached a masterpiece, especially with those two screenplays, if you want to call it that, where they used misdirection and they had baited and torched people with those jet sweeps all year long. So when you saw the design, it threw Philly off. And once it worked the first time, hey, Andy Reid was like, hey, let's do it again. And him and Eric Bieniemy, it was just a masterclass, and they pulled it off. And when you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes who can pull stuff off for you, yeah, it's the perfect combination. It is the perfect storm. Baby, you got a stew going. So KC has got himself the perfect stew going, and it may last for a very long time, considering how or however long Andy Reid decides he wants to keep coaching.
Yeah. So, oh, by the way, one of the Chiefs' X factors was Isaiah Pacheco. I like to call him the Pacheco
Yeah,
ball machine, as in the pachinko ball machine.
yeah.
Nice
Pacheco
ring
was
to it. He was more than just
he
a pin
was he was
pachinko ball
extremely
machine. He was a beast.
he was extremely hard to get down, getting key runs, key first downs. Let's not forget about Kadarius Tony as well. Not only that touchdown he had, but that big punt return. I think that was what the longest recorded punt return in Super Bowl history, or one of those type of things. Either it was without a touchdown or not. It was one of the longest returns ever at being done in a Super Bowl, and that was a big momentum shift play that kept things going with the Chiefs' way. That kept them into putting them in the position to where what they needed to do to win. So Kadarius Tony deserves big props as well.
Yes, sir, he does. So, with that being said, that's football. Now to college basketball.
Mhm.
Former Michigan State Spartans men's basketball player Keith Appling pled guilty to a second-degree murder and felony firearm charge in a fatal shooting incident in Detroit in 2021. That was on May 22nd.
My
Victim was
birthday.
Slide Edmonds. Yep. Yeah.
Ugh,
Wow. Sorry to hear that.
I know.
66 years of age.
Mm.
So that the pleading called for 18 to 40 years in prison. Also, this hit, but his first degree murder and second count of felony firearm charges were dismissed. The hearing will be set for March 3rd, 2023, the day after my sister's birthday,
Mm.
mind you. Speaking of which, and his girlfriend drove him away from the scene. She pleaded guilty as well. She'll face 18 months probation and her charges of accessory after the event, lying to police were both dropped under the plea agreement. So, with that being said, well, we wanted to throw that out there, and
It is worth
a
mentioning
tragic.
that as an it is worth mentioning that as an update to the story because this just happened to break mere hours before the shooting took place. So this was not done as a means to dunk on MSU or add on more bad news on what is already a horrific situation. It was just passing the news along because I remember when this story itself broke. It was heartbreaking a situation then. It's even more heartbreaking situation now. Consider the fact that Keith Appling, or the heat of the moment, whatever the case may be, he made a horrible, awful, bad, dumb, stupid decision that he's going to have to live with the rest of his life. Now, he took this deal knowing full well that he committed this crime, but he only also took this because he wanted to make sure that he had a chance to get out of prison while he was still alive. So that's pretty much the only reason why he took this deal. But still, he will be his life will be changed forever. Those around him have already been changed forever, and it's just a horrible, unfortunate situation all around for Keith Appling's case, anyway.
Yeah, just very, very tragic. And speaking of tragic, there was another shooting inside the Michigan State University campus at which hall was it again? I forgot.
I think they mentioned it was Berkey Hall. That's where they
Berkeley
mentioned
Hall.
where it
Yeah.
first started last night. Around this time, in fact, I think it was read one of the articles that shots were fired were reported at around 8:20 p.m. By police nearby near Berkey Hall. Um, Again, I'm not going to go into details. I've seen clips of it. I've seen some details. Plus, it's maybe a potential trigger warning to some of our audience members, so I don't even want to go down that route. But I can and will say this at least. Um, I'm just tired of it. I'm just done of seeing this pop up in my news cycle in my daily life, seemingly almost a daily occurrence now. And I don't have children. I hope to be a parent one day. I wish to be a parent one day. But even I will say, even as someone who doesn't have kids myself, I would be petrified about taking my child to school and just leaving them alone for a few hours. Not because I think someone's going to beat them up or some teacher's going to treat them bad, because I'm scared that they may not come home because some lunatic with a gun ran up inside that school. And the way that this system is set up in this country these days, to where it's almost easy and accessible to commit these types of crimes and actions, uh, what else needs to be said? I'm tired of the tweets. I'm tired of the condolences. With all due respect, I'm tired of the condolences. I'm tired of the prayers and the thoughts. No, here's my thought: save your prayers and do some action. Okay, stop taking all this money from these lobbyists. Stop being these prostitutes for the NRA. Stop wearing assault weapon lapel pins on your damn suits, members in Congress. Stop doing that. Stop putting on being circus sideshows for these people that only care about money and only that more than the
Because
lives
it's
and
never
well-beings of
funny.
American citizens. Okay, first and foremost, and the fact
Because it's
that
never funny.
no, and it's not even about funny. It's about making money, and it's trying to this dividing culture war BS crap, and I'm so sick of it. But think about this: there are kids
Greed.
in those dorms at East Lansing. They graduated from Oxford. And now think about
Yep.
this. In less than 2 years, they had to go through this again. That is sickening. That is sad. That is a disgrace. It should not have happened in this country, but yet it keeps happening every single time. I'm tired of it. I just we need action. We demand action. We deserve action. Thoughts and prayers
Yeah.
have stopped being an option a long time ago. We deserve and demand
Condolences
answers,
as well.
actions. Yes, the time for answers and actions and accountability is now. Period.
Yeah.
That's how you give these victims and their families and everyone who's had their lives shattered. Okay, because think about this. This should have stopped. This should not have stopped just before here. This should have stopped after Virginia. This should have stopped after Virginia Tech. This should have stopped after Parkland. This should have stopped after Oxford. This should have stopped after Sandy Hook. This should have stopped after Columbine. You get what I'm getting with this. So the time for talk is done. The time for thoughts and prayers is over. Get off your asses, people in Congress, and do something about this. From this state to the state down south to the state from coast to coast, get something done because we're sick and seeing our kids dying in our classrooms. Period.
Yeah. Gretchen Whitmer, our governor, spoke on it, and she was a Michigan State grad as well. And
And she's a mother as well.
yes, definitely a mother. Yeah.
So it's again the families forever shattered because and forever ruined because people that have the ability and have the capabilities to act and do what's needed refuse or fail to do so. And it's just a damn shame.
Yeah. That all that being said, sorry if I sound too delusional, but if only there were superheroes in real life.
No, it's not delusional. It's wishful thinking because frankly, when you deal with some
It
of the
is wishful
atrocities that
thinking.
you got to deal with in this world, it's you wish for a superhero in some instances.
I can even make one up myself. Captain Lumberjack, the Man of Gold.
Hmm.
No weaknesses whatsoever.
Make them impervious to
Gold.
bullets.
Yeah, especially them. So, with that being said, that is everything we've covered. Yes, action needs to be taken. That is another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. He's Ed Smith. I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. Like its Facebook page, subscribe to its YouTube channel at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, and listen in audio form on Spreaker. Business shoutouts go to Cali Tickets. Call Mark Goldman at 877-225-8425 or visit CaliTickets.com. Cadillac Nutrition. Download the Engage app to place an order for an ice or hot protein coffee, energy tea, or protein or post-workout shake. Creative embroidery of Cadillac for designing my Michigan Sports Truth Podcast logo on my t-shirt and long sleeve shirt. United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan. The Edo Ramen House in Royal Oak, rated Detroit's best Japanese restaurant in consecutive years. Call 248-556-5775 or visit Eden Ramen House, EdoRamenHouse.com. Stop by to place an order. You'll love their sushi and Kamiyan feasts as well. And the Red Ox Tavern in Auburn Hills, home of the 2017 pilot episode of the Detroit Sports Rack, hosted by Jeff Moss. Until next week. By the way, we are back on Fire Up Michigan at 8 p.m. next Monday. Don't forget.
Oh yeah.
So can't wait to we can't wait to get back on those airwaves on the South Florida Tribune Network. So with that being said, catch us on the South Florida Tribune Media Network on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. On Twitter especially at Tribune South. But again, follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. Like its Facebook page, subscribe to its YouTube channel at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, and listen in audio form on Spreaker. Until next week on Fire Up Michigan, for Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips. GTFN, ta-ta for now. Power to the people, hit them with a hind. We close our case.
Please take care of yourselves and stay safe, everyone. Please.
Yep. Stay warm until the ice melts.